Good morning, Radically for Jesus here. I'm going to do a video today on frugal tips. It's one of my favorite topics. I absolutely love it if I get to save some money on something. It's just my personality and the way I am. And these are some of my favorite types of videos on YouTube. I could sit and watch frugal tips for hours, which isn't really the best use of my time, but still, it's fun. I like it. My tips really aren't anything grand or exciting or anything some of you probably haven't heard before, but maybe some of you haven't. And these are not all of my tips by any means. I could probably do a video series on this as I think of other things to share. These are just a few quick things that I jotted down that are biggies for us. And recently, not as recently I suppose now, but last fall, this is currently May of 2019, last fall my husband had a layoff from work, and one of the first things we did, like a lot of people, when you have something like that happen, you clamp down tight on your finances and you just go into emergency mode where you're super careful on everything. And when that happened, thankfully, praise God, he had some severance to help get us through, and he ended up finding another position before that severance ran out. So huge help and blessing. But in that meantime, we did clamp down super hard to where we were super careful with everything that we did. And we set budgets and we went through and we made sure that we spent very carefully. And I think most people would do that. I would hope so. But some of the tips that I'm going to go over are ones that really came out during that time, and I wanted to go over them and share them with you. Probably number one, biggest saver, and you've probably heard this before, is to menu plan your meals. If there is one thing that can literally save you thousands, it is doing this, and I am not kidding. Grocery budgets can go very high. Some people can get by with their family only spending a few hundred a month, and others can go well over 1,000. We have been on both ends of that spectrum depending on how careful we are or we aren't, and it can really swing wildly, and a lot of people cannot sustain thousands per month. That's just crazy. Unless you have a giant family like the Duggars or something like that, you don't need to spend that kind of money. The biggest thing that I would recommend with the menu planning is just make sure it does not have to be perfect with each exact meal laid out perfectly. But what it does need to do is get the right number of meals for whatever time period you're planning. If you're planning for 1 week, then make sure that you have 7 solid dinners written out. If you plan the lunch and the breakfast, make sure you have 7 lunches and 7 breakfasts. However you structure your meals, plan the right number. And then whatever day of the week you want to make them on, doesn't really matter, as long as you know you've bought the right things. And make sure when you go to the store, you don't buy for stuff that you don't plan for. Stick to that menu, and then that will save you a ton. Because I know if I go to the store and I'm just shopping at random and thinking, well, we're low on this, we're low on that, and it'd be nice to make this, and oh, I want to make sure I have stuff for Alfredo, I want to make sure I have stuff for this, and then I'll come home and I'll have missing pieces and parts to several meals, and then things for meals that I didn't really even plan on or want anytime soon. So it's much more efficient if you plan and you only buy the stuff for those meals. Now that said, on a normal basis, it's good to allow some of your budget for buying ahead, for doing a little pantry prepping to make sure that you have a certain stock of things. If you know that you use a lot of bacon bits, and bacon bits are going to be on sale this month at your local store, then yeah, if you can buy a few extra because they're a really good price right now, by all means do that. So I do advocate doing that within reason and within a budget. You just have to be careful and be smart about it. But the big thing here with the frugal tip is menu plan. I can't emphasize that enough because I think that has the most potential to save the most money. With that, try not to eat out. Now we're terrible about this as a family, I admit it. We do it way too often. Probably not nearly as often as what some folks do. If you have both parents working outside the home, then I'm sure that is like skyrocketed in its amount. But if you, it are any time that you can set up to not do that, like cooking on the weekends, doing some freezer cooking, as they call it. If you've not done that, please Google it. But whatever you can do to reduce the amount that you eat out, it's an obvious thing, but it costs so much more to eat out than it does to eat at home. Save on this as much as possible. It is something we need to improve on as well, but you know, I'm sure that we're probably in a better place than some because I'm blessed to be able to stay at home, and that helps tremendously. But even if you're out there in the workforce, it is absolutely possible to save money by not eating out very much. Long time ago, I used to work outside the home. It's been many years since before I had children, and I would do the freezer cooking thing to help make it easier. That way I had something just to pull out of my freezer, pop it in the oven when I came home from work, because I was too tired to make meals from scratch. But if I did that on a weekend, then I was set. That will also save you a lot of money if you're not eating out, and it's healthier because you're not getting nearly as much junk. Now, I do believe that you can eat out and make good choices health-wise. You just have to be very, very careful about that. But I guarantee you it's going to come out far more expensive than cooking at home. And there's a lot of ways to do that. In fact, today I'm probably also going to be filming a video on menu planning because someone asked me recently to talk more about that. Now, I've talked a long time about this one. Let's move on to the next. One of them is making stuff from scratch rather than buying prepackaged. So even once you get to your grocery store, you've got your menu plan done and you're not eating out as much, the more that you can make from scratch, the better off you'll be. Now, I absolutely realize time crunches happen even for your stay-at-home moms and stuff. They happen for me all the time, especially if I get busy on homeschool days. I am no stranger to pulling out a brownie mix and making that for my family instead of making that for scratch. In fact, I really don't think that it's a terrible deal. However, that said, you can absolutely make them even cheaper if you just have the basic ingredients and pull them out of your pantry. You will come out cheaper every time. It is very, very rare. The one exception might be is if there's some kind of freak sale where you get some kind of discount store or something. If you have one of those, I don't really have one of those, what they call them, scratch and dent type stores. Not one here where I'm living now. There was one back in Columbus, but where I'm at now, I haven't really found a good one. But I see some of you on YouTube who have those discount stores and they look amazing. And people seem to be able to get some of those prepackaged like cake mixes, brownie mixes, things like that, even cheaper than scratch. And if you can, by all means, go for it. But generally, rule of thumb, you will come out better if you do items from scratch. But you do have to kind of balance that against your time. What's worth it? Some things are more worth it than others. You will find maybe a particular item, the time saved in buying that prepackaged just is really worth the $1 extra or whatever it might end up being. And then other times it might make a really big difference. If you use an absolute ton of beans, for example, you can save so much money instead of buying those pre-cooked canned beans by buying the hard dry beans and cooking them yourself in a large batch, maybe freezing some up, or if you're able to, canning them. That can save a lot of money. It's one small thing, but it is a time-consuming thing to do, especially if you don't have a pressure cooker or a crock pot where you can kind of set it and leave it. But again, balance your time versus saving on the item. Just be aware, of course, scratch items are going to come out cheaper, and some of them will surprise you that it's just not much more time to put together an item from scratch versus buying something prepackaged. There's a lot of frozen meals that I think people buy that really just don't save that much time. It depends on the meal and the thing in question, but there's some of them that it takes just as much time to cook that thing from frozen as it would to prepare a scratch meal. And you're going to come out better, cheaper, and healthier if you can do more of that work yourself and eliminate, yucky things that are in some of those prepackaged foods. Away from the food topic, one of the huge things we did a few years ago was eliminating cable. I know that is a tip that's commonly said, and it's a tip that a lot of people do not want to make a change to. I get why. It's not a fun prospect when you're sitting there and you have cable and you're thinking about eliminating it. You kind of start feeling like, wow, what will I do? What will I watch? Or whatever. When you get used to it pretty quickly, you find you have a little bit more time in your life and in your day for other things. But if you're like us, there's alternatives to that. We use things like Netflix and Amazon Prime. We did get a really good deal on Hulu last year, so we subbed to it. It was like $5 for a whole year. So totally worth that. We probably won't keep that one for forever because there's not a whole lot on there that we watch, but there was some food shows that were fun. And you can just save so much money. The amount of people I hear, or the amount that I hear that people pay for their cable bills is shocking to me now. They've really gone up since we had cable. I think it's been probably about 7 years now since we've had it. We really don't miss it. The only time that we miss it at all, and it's really not a we, it's my husband. He sometimes will miss the ESPN stuff, but not very often. He's not huge into sports. Just once in a while in the fall he might like to watch a Bengals game or something like that, and if he can, he'll pick that up on the antenna. And when that works out, he's all thrilled that he gets to watch a game. And beyond that, he really doesn't care too much. But I know, even if you say your husband's really into sports or something, there's alternatives that you don't have to get the full cable package. You can buy certain things like, I think, Sling TV, and then they have some of those channels, and that's much cheaper than having cable itself. So look into getting rid of cable and cable alternatives. Also with that one, use your library. Many people, if you've not been to your library in a long time, do not realize how many videos and DVDs that they have. They have a ton. And if you're anywhere near a larger city, like we're near Cleveland, Ohio, within the Cleveland system, there is a mass amount of DVDs and videos that you can borrow for free. And they even have, a lot of their branches have drive-through windows. You go online and you can reserve what you want. If you hear a movie that's new and come out and you want to get on a waiting list for it, awesome. But if you're watching something that's maybe been out for quite a long time, all you have to do is go online, reserve it, drive through the window at the library. You don't even have to go in. Pick it up and you've got it for a couple weeks. And quite often they auto-renew, and a lot of the libraries have even dropped off late fees. Now, I don't know how your library system is where you are, but I have to admit, ours is pretty amazing. And what a resource. When my husband got laid off last year, that's one of the first things that, we did was we went to the library. It was kind of a, let's go to the library. It's something we can do for free. It's fun. Pick out some new, documentaries and movies and things to watch. And it was a good free uplift, something to go do. And we didn't have to feel guilty about it. Another big saver is used cars. I know a lot of you probably really hate that one, but over the years, most of our marriage, we've driven used cars. Back when I first got married, I think it was within the year that we actually married, we got a car lease on a brand new car. And that was the only truly brand new car I ever had. But it was also the worst deal financially we ever had. It was just insane how bad that deal was financially. Loved the car, but not worth it. And since that point, we made it a point to buy used. After that, we had gotten a truck that wasn't very used. It was like only 6 months old when someone had turned it back in. I think it was a company had turned it back in on a lease or something like that, and we bought it, and we ended up buying a car loan for that particular one. We had a payment on that for a while, but after that we stopped doing even that. We basically will go for a car that's anywhere from 5 to even 10 years old and then pay cash for it. Just save up, take a tax return, use it on that car or whatever, and go for it. There is a risk that you end up with a lemon, or that something's just got a lot of work that needs done. But even when you end up with those that have a lot of work that needs done, you're probably going to save so much on a car payment that it's still worth it to pay for those repairs. They're inconvenient, I get that, I admit it. Been dealing with that on a particular vehicle we have right now. We bought it about a year ago, and it's been a stinker with some of its issues. But all in all, it's still going to probably come out to be a better financial deal by far in compared to having a car payment. We haven't had a car payment in probably 15 years, something like that. It's been a really, really long time. Don't miss it at all. And in general, most of the used vehicles we have bought, there's been a lot of them we've paid $2,000 or $3,000 for, and then they've lasted us several years with almost no problems. That is mighty, mighty hard to beat. And when you divide that out for its cost basis, it's very, very small, much smaller than a car payment. So strongly consider going with used cars that you can pay cash for, and then just dealing with repairs and maintenance as it comes, because those repairs and maintenance will ultimately and nearly always be cheaper. One thing for repairs, now we are not good about this for car repairs, but use YouTube to help you. If you have things in your house that break, then say, hey, is this something within my realm and ability to fix it? I have been surprised at the things I have been able to fix with the help of YouTube. YouTube is a massive resource. Now grant you, I upload videos on how to do sewing, and other people have found those and learned how to fix something that I knew how to fix. But I have learned how to fix things like refrigerators, stoves, my washer and my dryer. Basically all of my major appliances, I've had them apart at some point and worked on some component. And most of them really aren't nearly as hard as what you would think of to work on. Replaced the burners in a grill before. Just all sorts of stuff I wouldn't have known how to do had it not been for YouTube. Now cars are more out of my league. Much more complicated, much more is at stake with them, and I find sometimes I may not have the hand strength I need or something like that. My husband is not a car guy. He does not know how to do that stuff. He's a computer guy. He can take your computer apart and he can fix that, but not your car. That's okay. But the things that you can fix will probably surprise you. And even if you're a girl, so what? I know girls a lot of times may not to fix something, but yeah, come on. Let's tackle this. Let's go for YouTube. Let's look stuff up, find websites, because sometimes you will find a website with great detailed by detailed picture. More often than not, I prefer YouTube because it's just so much more visual to see what it is you're trying to fix. But such a resource is out there. Go for it. Try to fix it. Don't underestimate yourself or your abilities, because I bet you can do it. Learning to sew. That was one of the tips that I wrote down. Totally try. If you haven't looked at my videos, do so please. They're not perfect, but they're a start, and I'm going to be uploading more of them. Other people have a lot of videos out there too, and probably a lot better than mine, to be honest with you, with better visuals and clarity and stuff than what I've been able to do. But definitely give it a try. See what you can do on learning to sew, because if you can hem some stuff, fix some holes and repairs, sew a button on, even just those very few skills will save you some money in your clothes. Now, I will admit that making your clothing from scratch is often not cost effective, depending on what you're doing. If you have a specialized type of clothing or dress or something that you wear, then yeah, you need to make it from scratch. It's much cheaper than paying another seamstress to make it, custom make them for you, because time is expensive. Everybody's time is expensive. And honestly, I see of like the plain modest dresses and such out there, it's going to be at least 50 to 60 at most websites I've seen to have that made for you. And frankly, that is a steal compared to the time that seamstress is going to have in something. And I totally understand that. But most of the time, depending on the type of clothing you wear, if you're wearing more normal clothes or the more modern modest, depending on what type of things that you wear, you can go to a thrift store and come out way cheaper than going to Joann's, buying fabric and making it yourself. So it depends on the clothing item, but definitely consider, at very least, learning to sew basic repairs, hems, buttons, and holes and things like that, or to be able to maybe take something in a little bit in a spot that's maybe a little loose. That can save you a lot. One obscure thing that I was thinking of this morning is toilet wipes. Everybody buys those like little Lysol wipes and stuff for your bathroom. I understand the convenience of them. I had bought in a couple containers from the Dollar Tree, and they're useful to have, but I think they're so thin and flimsy. Don't really like that much, and I kind of don't really dig the chemical on them. It's very strong. An alternative to that, if you really are adamant that you want a disposable item, try baby wipes. Less strong on the chemicals, the wipe itself is thicker, and it actually comes out a lot cheaper, because that package of, I think it's like 72, is about $1.50, but like at Dollar Tree, the container of the toilet type wipes, you only get like 20 of them are in there or something, and it's $1 for that. So you get a lot better per wipe cost if you just use a baby wipe. Even cheaper was be using a spray bottle and paper towels if you really want something disposable, or obviously the cheapest option is a spray bottle and a cloth that you can wash. Generally, I prefer avoiding disposable items. Like, I do have paper towels here behind me. I keep them around for certain jobs that I know will annihilate a cloth, or maybe if something is just really, really gross and high in bacteria and I just don't really want to deal with that. So I keep them around. I feel like they have their use. However, I don't use them very often, and I don't buy them very often. While they live on my counter, they're not used nearly as often as most people do. Most of the time I use cloths and towels and I wash them, especially something on, like, say, doing your windows. Most people use a ton of paper towels just washing your windows and wiping those down, but those little microfiber cloths, one package is like $4 at Walmart, and you can use them over and over and over. That's just such a huge saver. So avoid disposables as much as possible, and I know a lot of you probably are already trained to do that, but the more of those you avoid, the more you save by far. When you do buy those reusable cloths, especially the microfiber, make sure when you wash them in your washing machine, you do not use fabric softener, because it absolutely kills them. If you've already made that mistake and put fabric softener on them, run them through with a load, or maybe even 2 loads, with a solid cup of vinegar, and that will kind of strip some of that back off. But definitely, if you're washing those, try to make your towel load separate, or just put it with your bath towels and then don't use fabric softener. There's been a lot of people who don't know that. For a long time I didn't know that, didn't really think about it, and then that would be a problem. I can't use a whole lot of that stuff anyway because I have a lot of skin allergies, but it is very, very important, especially the liquid fabric softener. Do not use it on your towels and your rags and stuff, because it kills their absorbency and spreads a greasy film. It will make it impossible to wash your windows with them. But again, avoid disposables. Use hankies and things like that for maybe, your day-to-day nose blowing. Now, if we get a cold and we have flus and we're like really, really sick and everybody in the family is going through a ton, I'm all for using a box of tissues, because at that particular time you don't want extra laundry. You're tired, you're sick, you don't feel good, and you're a biohazard. It's just really, really intense. But for the day-to-day, totally just use a hanky. It saves some money there, so why not? Again, balance. Sometimes the disposable is worth it, but a lot of times save the money, and then when you do use them, then you don't feel guilty about it. You're like, I don't use this stuff normally, but right now I need it. The last tip, and completely again obscured with the other stuff, as a homeschooler I print a lot. It's kind of obnoxious, but one of the things I do to make that cheaper is buying a very old inkjet printer that is also capable of having a continuous ink system attached to it. That was a tip someone gave me a few years ago, And not all printers can have continuous ink attached, because ultimately these aren't made by the manufacturer and they do void the warranty, but it is a huge cost saver. The printer I have and the ink system I have were bought for like less than $100, and 2-3 years of heavy printing off of that. And I have bought ink refills once off of eBay for I think $10-15, but that's it, and that lasts so long with heavy printing. So consider looking into continuous ink. Epson and Canon are a little bit easier to get those for. There is a website called inkproducts.com that I found a lot of info on about that, and they have a YouTube channel too. Totally recommend it. But find you a printer. Like the next time you're looking to buy a printer, go through and make sure your printer is capable of either using refillable cartridges, which are also nice and just as easy, or the continuous ink tank that you can have on the outside and just refill. Very messy, wear gloves, but you can do it, and it does save a lot of money. Now I know that there's new printers out there that have ink subscriptions and stuff like, not messing with that because I do not like subscriptions. You know, again, a cheap person. But the continuous ink has just been such a cost saver. It was just one oddball thing that I wanted to throw out there. Now again, I'll probably have other tips that I might share on another day, but this video is getting really long, so I want to go ahead and end it. You guys have an awesome day.